Monster.
Oh, I
read the literature. I know it's boring to me. I was a tweaker when I came in.
Over time, you've had a
couple lines out of the big book. I was sleeping like a baby. And find your groove. This can also be.
Yeah, probably about 300.
I can't
call it a social
I
experiment.
On my
you don't have to.
And that's the guy who shot himself in the chest with a shotgun.
I'm a one day at a time type of guy.
I've seen a little.
So I know what's waiting for me if I go pick up. Nothing but.
And there, by the way, for those of you going, that's selfish on your part. No,
and, I don't want to.
I've met people who have had traumatic events happen with their sponsees. It had nothing to do with me.
Don't drink, go to meetings, and come back tomorrow.
I'm just telling you that I have a problem getting attached.
And I will speak to those with 5+ years. And since this is our first episode, I'll explain. Ian's probably got a different number, and we'll take turns sending out our future messages and our past message. My message is for those who have 5+ years, because I don't think you know shit until you have 5 years in the program. And then at 5 years, you wake up one morning and you go, oh, now I get it.
This whole thing's about fit,
it might happen
right?
sooner for you,
but
it is based on my opinion and what I have seen out of people. It takes about 5 years. Fair number? Plus or minus 5 years?
We are afraid of dealing with our own emotions. It is a fear of our own.
It's
right?
probably 3 to 5, but I like rounding up to an easy
I would say 3
not
to 5.
just emotions,
it
but
depends
definitely
on the person. I mean, I know
so,
we're not supposed to talk about personalities,
in general,
but
what are the
greatest,
what are the
great clarity
fear
that I got
drivers
early on,
for people? I mean, what is it that people are most fearful of?
I just
because that seems to be an integral part. From
my responsibilities increased, and
it is the fear. What is the fear?
Really
what is the driver?
For that. And it's when, for me, it's when life is going good, like at 5
selfishness
years, or 6
or dishonesty
years, 7 years.
or
that's when I get
economic insecurity.
That's when I feel like I don't need
anger,
a higher power.
Fear of acceptance,
I don't
fear
need,
of rejection.
To talk
so it's
to
basically. So are you saying that most alcoholics and addicts have mommy and daddy issues?
Solution in my life.
I'm asking.
And that's when I get in trouble.
Yeah.
So you're saying that. From your perspective of the
luckily,
sponsees
I've
you've
been
had,
around enough to realize
they didn't get enough hugs in their life.
That's happening. And
no, some of them got too much.
Fair enough.
For me, pause is a great weapon.
Some of them got too many.
So basically, you're saying that there'd be a lot less alcoholics.
Definitely, when I have cravings
to
drink or use,
if people actually raise their children correctly.
Because no matter what I'm feeling, good, bad, or indifferent,
forget
it's
the biological
this too
and
shall
all
pass.
the other
whether it's good, whether it's bad.
Do things
so
in
as
a
long as I can hold on to my
manner.
ass long enough that feeling goes
yes,
away.
I am a believer.
I'm going to have a shot at making it a productive.
Yes, there is a small percentage of those that it's in our genes.
My problem is my two biggest
I am
fears
a
are
firm
fear of
believer
success
that
and
somewhere,
fear of
somehow, there was a traumatic event
when one's stronger than the other,
early on in our lives or in our formative
years, and the other one's stronger, it's not going to be that good. It'll probably be fun, but it won't be that productive.
The traumatic
that somehow screams oxymoron.
Right, it does. Well, that's how I know I'm in the right place.
And during the course
well, my message today is for those that have 5+ years. It is not a message of hope. My message of hope is to the person who has one day listening to this for the first time. You who have one day, you are statistically more likely going to see 5 years without drinking or using again. Those of you listening to the show who have 5+ years, you are more statistically likely to drink before the other person. The newcomers kind of have you. Was that dicky on my part? I wanted to end on a dicky note.
But yeah, it was pretty individuals. But hey, if you and I can stay sober,
what? I bet you.
No, I'm sure it isn't.
That is real proof, and we'll definitely get into our stories because tune in next time to step 1. We're going to go one by one
because they didn't
for these first 13 episodes. We will tell our stories and we will put them into practical play. Just so you know, Ian is a God-fearing NACA guy. I am.
Unfortunately,
I'm an atheist. I believe you can be either one and still get sober.
Absolutely.
I don't have to be to the agnostic.
And,
I'm telling you straight up, if you got no belief in a higher power, trust me, the other steps will kind of work themselves out for you. Okay,
yeah,
we get to it. I'll explain it.
Go to my point.
I don't want to give away the punchline, but the punchline's this. If you're going to be a real atheist, the secret, you've got to be 100% honest in your entire lifestyle. You literally have to be honest all the time. You cannot, because you have nothing to fall back on. There's no higher power. No. If you really live the atheist lifestyle, those are the honest people in the room. If they're not, they're not being honest. You kind of have to be congruent to it. But I don't want to turn anybody off before we get there. I'm just saying, if you have issues with God, great, hang in there. We'll talk about
this the other day. Not only
everybody does,
sound really shitty on
to
my
some
part,
degree or another.
I'm so self-obsessed.
And now that one of the physicists has completely confirmed the fact that we are biological experiments in a petri dish, I'm trying to mentally wrap my brains around that one these days. Is that crazy conspiracy theory stuff?
Cognizant form of Asperger on some level.
Maybe.
Which
Maybe.
I just like the word Asperger.
But that's a physicist.
Right.
But so, I'm somewhere on the scale because I don't have the
next week, sign up here on Spreaker. It will be on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. It takes a couple of weeks for those to happen. But if you're listening to it off this link, click on the little button on your player and sign up. So you'll have the show next week. We'll also make sure you guys have it in the feed. Send us an email.
Never mind.
At black, the word black,
no, I'm
the word
all
white,
natural right now.
the word recovery, three words, black, white, recovery, at gmail.com, and we'll answer all of your questions. I would love to do a mailbag session. Next week, this time, next week, everybody.
And according to Drew,
okay, set your clocks to it. Step one. So if you're waiting to do your step one, I highly recommend you wait until you hear from us. I've done 3 or 4 different versions of the silly thing.
Closest friends.
Here's
a stat.
Everybody's got a spin on step one.
And the workbook, it's pretty intense.
4. Okay.
I'm glad I got
like attracts like, right? My mom.
Yeah, mine was in the hospital, and it was so shocking to me to hear my life story that even I was like, I had the out of body of, who the hell is this? This doesn't even sound real.
Weight gets better.
So we'll talk about it next week, and having your first out-of-body experience, hearing your stories. Hopefully that works for you. Again, black, white, recovery at Gmail. Send us an email. We'll read them on the air next week. Hopefully we hear from you. Certainly Ian would be more than happy to talk about whatever you send in, I'm sure. I personally don't care if you guys
in your mind if I lay it out like
write in. Which will probably ensure I get emails of people who hate me. I'm sure of it.
Hate mail?
So some of it is in the upper.
What I would say is write about it and tell your sponsor if you hate me after the first episode.
What we have now,
and I'm glad to know my egotistical self is glad to know that somewhere there's somebody writing about me and telling their sponsor.
For my daughter now.
Nice, right?
Looking at her
nice, absolutely.
Tune in next week. We will be here, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for keeping me sober.
We would have called in the past attention deficit issues. They are easier to address now and easier to fix now, and education is far much better than it was, say, for you in the 60s, for me in the 70s. During those, I think we've lost touch with, and I'm saying this for everybody, some of it's not your fault. Whatever happened to you between the ages of 0 to 12 is pretty much where you got fucked up.
Exactly.
And some of it is not your fault. You don't have any control. You don't have control over Dad being a dirtbag.
Most of it has caused actions that are your fault.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. Like, once you knew full well what you were doing. But your moral compass is created from 0 to 12.
Yeah.
And you spend a whole lifetime trying to justify why the world is not fitting into that circle, whatever it is that you fit for yourself. It's probably why I'm more wired together than people that I know that still go to the meeting religiously and still cling to the concepts of the meeting and still preach and pontificate the greatness of AA. And it's my experience that when I do blah, 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 yeah, you cheat on your wife, asshole. That's what your experience teaches you. Okay?
Yeah, that's just not a good example.
No, it's not. But that's a common person. You and I both know it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm not married.
I get that.
So
but the fourth step being the way it is, if I do all of this work, right? And multiple times, I've done it multiple times, just like you have. And I'm able to come to grips with, wow, I really know what happened from 0 to 12. I know what happened when I worked for my dad from my teenage years to my adult years. I know where my anger comes from. I know where all this shit is. It's on me at some point to man up and go, the reason I don't listen, the reason I'm self-centered, the reason I'm any of those things is because I'm making a conscious choice to be that way. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Anybody can change. It's just a decision you make in the morning.
Well, it goes back.
But you have to identify what you want to change.
Did you ever read The 5 Love Languages? There's a great book for relationships. For those of you who are in relationships trying to keep your shit together while you get sober, break up now and get it over with.
Right, yeah. Yeah, there's too much
change happening. I can't even begin to tell you the number of nervous breakdowns I've actually seen based on this topic. But my advice would be to get The 5 Love Languages. Well, it's probably a little God-centric because that's the way this particular PhD is. He does bring up a great point about doing things for someone else. And relationships in general can be towards your kids. They can be towards anybody else. But he brings up a great point. I got into this in my relationships once. Like, well, I want you to do things because you want to do them. And he brings this up in the book, and maybe a great way to look at this from all the shit you've done during a 4-step. Look, nobody wants to get up and vacuum the floor. Nobody wants to make their bed. You have to get in the habit of doing it, and it will please others and please yourself. But you have to do things as a habit. At the end of the day, not drinking or using is a habit. And I don't think people actually appreciate that that's what it really is. It's not a conscious life choice.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So what have we learned? What have we learned from the 4-step other than any woman in the program who has more than 1 year doesn't really know how to have sex anymore?
Just do it.
And by the way, am I right in my assessment? After a year or two, that crazy party animal know how to bang thing disappears? Really?
No.
You've met girls with time who still know how to vote-o-do correctly.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to shake guys off of women.
Well, yeah, I mean, I go through phases. I'll go through a phase where I'll only date girls in the program because, girls that drink don't understand. And plus, girls that drink have that whole romantic sharing a bottle of wine in front of the fire bullshit, which I'm not going to partake in. So once that's out the door, that relationship is ending. And then sometimes I have a couple of nightmare program relationships, and I seek relationships outside the program.
Okay, so what did we assess today in 4-step? Have no relationships. You're going to break up with anybody you're currently with if you have less than a year. You need to find out whatever your schism was from age 0 to 12. That's important. I don't think anybody ever goes that far back when they do their 4th step the first time. To look at the childhood things. I can tell you safely, I know where it was.
Clear out some more.
I know exactly where it was. I know in 7th grade when I wanted to die the first time. I know when it happened. I know where I was, where I didn't fit in. I didn't feel a part of. It was grade 7. I'm a 48-year-old person, and I can clearly tell you that I had the conscious decision that I wanted to die at that age. And now, as the father of a 12-year-old in the same position, I cannot even imagine her thinking that way.
Right.
What's more frightening to me is that nobody could see that on me. Nobody was checking in with me. And I don't know if they really need to. I guess you have to say something. I don't know. I don't know who's to blame for that.
Right. You either gotta ask for help, or you gotta figure it out for yourself.
Right. I get that.
There's two choices.
But if you can find that little bump in the road,
or try to carry it with drugs and alcohol for the next 20 years, and then figure it out.
That's the question that I'm most asked. How am I able to be a one-hit wonder? My answer was, I know that in grade 7, somewhere between grade 6 and grade 7, whatever occurred to me emotionally, whether or not I can unearth it or not, is the day I wanted to die from that day forward, I'd never wanted that feeling again, and I did everything in my power to avoid feeling that way, where I needed to be gone. That just led me to drugs and alcohol. It was TV for a time. It was everything for a time.